Anne to the brave frogs of Wartwood, Sasha to the strong toads in the tower, and Marcy to the wise newts of Newtopia, winding up exactly where these three needed to be for the world to be saved. Was it destiny or sheer luck? What if things had come differently? The girls would definitely not be able to smile today. What if Anne was teleported to Newtopia instead, while Marcy was in Toad Tower and Sasha in Wartwood? In our considerations, we will follow the original structure of the show, meaning that we'll first discuss Sasha's time in Wartwood and then Marcy's experiences at Toad Tower before we look at their reunion and Anne's stay in Newtopia. After aimlessly wandering the wilderness for a while, Sasha is spotted by Wally and consequently encounters Sprig, who got caught in the trap that we assume Sasha has built too. Taking into account that Sasha is nowhere near as compassionate as Anne, she would actually have no problem leaving him to become Mantis fodder. Yet, she ends up saving him anyway, because she is calculating and quite prudent. Thinking back to the past rough nights, she decides to rescue the frog boy, intending to get him to help her in return. Her plan is a success, as she one-shots the Mantis and is allowed to stay with the Plantars. However, the Plantars are no more than the means to her end. In other words, she does not get along with them, and is not in the slightest interested in establishing any true bonds with them. And because she is not willing to ever do something fun with the Plantars, indeed, they don't get many chances to bond in the first place. Polly is alright though, for obvious reasons. One of the only rare bonding occasions is Family Shrub, when Sasha sees the cool stuff in the basement and can bond with the kids over liking the same things. Same problem goes for interactions with the villagers, by the way. In every situation, Sasha does the bare minimum to be allowed to stay, but doesn't try to integrate in any way, thus is not accepted. Quite in contrast, she even raises attention with rather unpleasant behavior. For instance, in the episode Sprig vs. Hap, she keeps fueling the fire by manipulating both parties into making the conflict escalate. Generally, she's arguing with HP all the time. HP wants her to help around the house and the farm, but Sasha refuses, and also insults Hap's cooking. One day during a nasty argument, things go so far that Hap kicks Sasha out. Sasha is so fed up with him that she decides to leave. She then goes to stay with Mayor Toadstool, the only person from the village who likes her, because they occasionally bully Toadie and cook up schemes to scam the villagers together. A short while goes by until Bog and his crew arrive in Wartwood to collect taxes, and Toadstool makes Sasha accompany them. As expected, she feels comfortable around them and admires their way of life, showing their superiority, being in control. Sasha does not have any moral issues with fully supporting the Toad's actions in Wartwood and joins in on straight up robbing the villagers, including the Plantars. Out of spite concerning the recent argument, she likely enjoys robbing the farm the most. When they're done, Sasha decides to go back to the tower with the Toads. Before we discuss her arrival there and reunion with Marcy, here's a look at how Marcy has been doing so far. Marcy is caught and imprisoned by Captain Grime after the Toad soldiers found her playing with some bugs in the woods. He immediately begins to question her harshly about what she is and where she came from, thereby making our small sensitive Marcy cry. Grime is perplexed and apologizes like the tsundere he is, but he keeps being cold and rude to her afterwards, so that Marcy doesn't want to answer any of his questions. Well, she doesn't want to, but in her clumsiness she does let it slip that she probably came to Amphibia with Anne and Sasha. Thus, Grime does not know anything about the Calamity Box, but is well aware that two other humans are currently in Amphibia. Just like in the OT, he does not report anything to Andreas. During her time in prison, she gets along super well with the Toads who are supposed to guard her. Due to her interest in the Toads as a species and in their culture, she questions them about their personal lives, their preferences and hobbies, etc. Only being used to Grime's strict working environment, they take a liking to her straight away, and later begin telling her about their personal problems. Marcy kind of becomes the star of the tower, as she manages to fix everyone's problems. One of them had back pain, another a broken axe, Braddock and Percy seek dating advice, and so on. At first, Grime is enraged, his soldiers befriended the prisoner. Yet, after carefully reflecting upon the matter, he realizes that he has a genius at hand. A warm-hearted, gullible genius that he can use for his purposes. He puts on a whole act in front of Marcy about how sorry he is for treating her so terribly until now. From that point on, he behaves very nicely towards her, giving her everything she desires. Books, food, D&D nights, and a little freedom to explore the surroundings of the tower. All that to secure that Marcy does not suspect anything when Grime begins asking her for a few favors here and there. Weeks have passed since Marcy first arrived at the tower, and so far, no sign of Anne or Sasha. For that reason, she never would have expected Sasha to just walk into the tower on some random Tuesday. But here she is, and the two are happy to be reunited. Thanks to Marcy's current position and the fact that Bog can attest Sasha is an ally to the Toads, she is not imprisoned upon arrival, instead immediately being integrated into the army, where she quickly climbs the ranks. Given how well she gets along with Grime, it's not long until she has become his second in command. This whole constellation is extremely interesting, because Sasha has not undergone any character development. Following her excitement about reuniting with Marcy, she soon resumes pushing her around like she usually does. Unfortunately, her bullying has even become legitimate, given that Sasha is vice captain and has every right to order Marcy around. By shooting her down every time that Marcy gets enthusiastic about exploring this new world, and by not spending much time with her, Sasha makes Marcy feel utterly lonely again. Thereby, she could enforce Marcy's belief it was a good choice to come to Amphibia, because Marcy gets the feeling if they were not stuck here together, Sasha would have already left her. While Sasha definitely becomes Grime's favorite, Marcy remains the soldiers' favorite. They do like Sasha too, and look up to how cool and strong she is, but she never felt the need to go out of her way and get to know them, unlike in the OT, where she had the incentive to do so, aiming to manipulate them. Thus, since Marcy has spent more time with them and has a personal relationship with all of them, she is way closer to them than Sasha is, and actually feels appreciated by them. Some time passes just like that, until Harpap fails to become the valley's mayor, thereby catching Grime's attention. Grime confides in Sasha he plans to catch Harpap, and she's all for it, but only up to the point when he mentions he will execute him. Why is Sasha against it on this timeline when she wasn't on the OT? I need to mention that she does not oppose an execution in general, and doesn't really care whether Harpap is guilty of a true crime or not, but two aspects influence her opinion here. Firstly, because she stayed in Wardwood and spent less time with Grime, her opinion of frogs is not quite as bad as on the OT. She does not believe HP should be executed simply because he is a frog that participated in an election, but that alone doesn't suffice. Her main reason is that the Plantars helped her when she was in need. Chances are they may have saved her life. While Sasha's morality is certainly questionable, even she does abide by some code of honor and feels indebted to the Plantars. Fact is, she would not care if HP was arrested and rotted in jail for eternity. It's just that she can't let this particular frog die, because he did not leave her behind in times of need. In other words, she does not care about HP as a person. She merely wants to get rid of the feeling she still owes the Plantars. status one. The big problem in this situation is that there is no way she is risking her dream lifestyle Grime is making possible for her for HP's sake. Under the argument that such an example could be detrimental to his rule, she attempts to change Grime's mind. However, since ruling with fear is exactly his style, he shuts her down, and she shuts up, in order to not anger him any further. Due to not being able to stop Grime's madness, Sasha needs to take matters into her own hands, and seeks counsel from Marcy. Officially, the two of them are currently in charge of deriving a strategy to fulfill Grime's goals, when in reality, they are drawing up a double-sided plan that enables the Plantars to flee, without Grime becoming aware of the betrayal. Eventually, what they present to Grime is the original plan from the OT. The true operation will be executed during the cover plan and goes down as follows. They go to Wardwood to invite the frogs over to the tower, pretending to be all friendly. Wanting to show how courteous he is, Grime encourages the Plantars to join him and Sasha in their cart, since they are friends of Sasha. Yet they politely decline, not wanting to be around her more than necessary, still hurt by Sasha's actions. Before Grime can consider forcing Sasha to sit somewhere else, Marcy quickly leads them to another wagon, while Sasha reassures Grime that everything is going according to plan, and nothing would happen since Marcy has an eye on them. In fact, everything has been going according to the real plan to this point, being that Marcy and Sasha anticipated the Plantars' wish and intended for it to separate Grime from the Plantars. Consequently, Marcy now has the chance to inform the Plantars about what is going on and is about to help them escape. Unfortunately, Grime can't sit still, not being able to hold watch over the prisoners himself. Thus, Sasha can't detain him from looking out of the wagon to check on the other, and seeing how Marcy is assuring the Plantars a safe escape. They make a run for it, while Marcy stays behind, not being aware yet that she was busted. The secret as well as the fake plan are on hold from this moment on, as Grime makes his way towards Marcy to arrest her. Marcy tries to hold the distance between them, but will not hold out for long, desperately looking to Sasha for help. When Grime asks her reason for betraying him, she admits that Sasha was involved too, hoping she could somehow talk them out of it, like she always did with the teachers, etc. Sasha's reaction is quite the opposite though. Fearing she'd lose her status and be imprisoned too, she betrays Marcy. Moreover, from Sasha's POV, Marcy ratted her out, instead of keeping quiet about her involvement in order to protect her. She rejects Marcy's claims, telling Grime that this kind of behavior is typical for Marcy. Besides toads, she's had an interest in frogs too ever since arriving in Amphibia, and couldn't bring herself to abandon the Plantars. Additionally, of course she's trying to push the blame onto Sasha now. Smart as she is, she hopes to be spared by framing Sasha. Evidently, Marcy is speechless. One of her best friends does not stand by her, is accusing her of devising a plan she herself came up with, and makes her look like a treacherous trickster in front of her toad friends, who will now reconsider their relations with Marcy. Grime does not doubt Sasha's words, preparing to come at Marcy with full power. Right when he is about to leap towards her, he is hit in the face with a stone, shot from a slingshot. To Marcy's luck, the Plantars have actually been hiding close by, watching the whole thing. Wanting to save her because she saved them, Sprig comes to grab her by the arm and they all escape the scene. The toads cannot catch up to them, as they only began pursuing after Grime woke up and gave the order. When the Plantars think themselves in safety for now, they discuss today's events with Marcy, who explains that it really was Sasha's idea to save them. Their opinion of her ameliorates slightly. Simultaneously, Sasha just betrayed Marcy, thereby smashing their relationship into pieces. Today, Marcy learned what it feels like to be deceived by someone you thought you could trust, which is why she is torn now. On one hand, she is panicking, because her deepest fear is fundamentally becoming reality, since for Marcy, Sasha's behavior clearly proves that she does not really want to be friends with Marcy anymore, thus rendering her lonely. Therefore, she feels she should definitely never ever admit to having teleported on purpose, since it could turn out to be a reason or chance for Anne to leave her too. On the other hand, she feels terrible, considering that if Anne and Sasha ever find out about her secret, they'll be as hurt as she is in this moment. So shouldn't she clear things up soon to prevent that? At this point, she cannot discern the right choice in this dilemma. Following a short while of everyone being drenched in thought, they agree they won't be safe in the valley from now on. In addition, Marcy needs to look for Anne. For these reasons, they depart for Neutopia. Meanwhile, Sasha stays at Toad Tower, since in fact the execution plan was never really carried out to a point where the Toad army would have indulged in illegal activities. No frog, except for the Plantars, ever got wind of what Grime was plotting, and even if, could not prove it. In short, word of Grime's betrayal never gets out, meaning he continues being a captain of Toad Tower. Accordingly, he does not have a mental meltdown that originally awakened his desire to overthrow the crown. For now, they leisurely pass the time in the valley, until they too make way for Neutopia. But we're not at this point of the timeline yet. Before we return to this point, to understand how we get there, we need to examine Anne's stay in Neutopia and her encounter with Marcy. After Anne opens her eyes, she strolls around the strange Newt city, hoping to find out where she is. Obviously, people keep staring at her, but being as she is, she approaches several of them, turning every single conversation into a nice chat. That being the case, everyone offers their help, so that Anne steadily makes her way to the castle, following the Newt's advice that the king could certainly help her get home. She is brought before the king and allowed to stay, as Andreas convinces the core to keep her alive, his reasoning being the same as in the OT. Unlike Marcy, Anne is not as invested with the city and does not become part of the Newtopian Guard, simply because she does not have the abilities to enhance the city or offer wise advice to the authorities. Instead, she spends her time exploring the city and helping wherever she can. That is, unfortunately, the only source of character development, which is painfully minuscule, at least over the course of the time she spends alone, although potentially being alone could teach her some lessons too, since her main issue was being dependent on Marcy and Sasha. By not having the possibility of simply going with the flow and being forced to make decisions for herself, she can bit by bit manifest her own personality. In theory, she is not 100% lonely, reason being that she does hold friendly relations to Olivia and Yunnan. However, their bonds are unmentionably deep and just cannot be compared to what the Plantars offered her, in terms of opportunities for development too. The same applies to Marcy and Sasha, by the way. While they do foster the connections to their respective companions, the time they spend together is restricted, so that their development begins a lot later than in the OT, and will mainly be triggered by interaction between the three of them. In strong contrast to Marcy's experiences in Neutopia, Anne does not spend as much time with Andreas. Still, being that Andreas has decided to keep Anne alive for now, he does not stand by idly, only observing, rather attempting to learn something about Anne and maybe gaining her trust. She does not open up to him about all of her feelings and issues, but at least she explains in detail how she and her friends ended up in Amphibia, as she deems it necessary Andreas knows it for him to be able to help. Additionally, she does not feel the need to hide the fact that Sasha made her come along and steal the box, while she really wanted to be home with her family. That alone is plenty for Andreas to partly derive the friendship dynamics between her, Marcy and Sasha. Plus, it's not hard to miss that Sasha has always acted as their leader, while Anne has always been meagerly self-determined, merely going along with Sasha and making sure that Marcy is not lost during the process. Therefore, he figures if he ever meets Sasha and manages to manipulate her, he'd have all three girls doing what he wants. By the way, Andreas does not consider Anne a suitable vessel for the core, reason being that she's ultimately just not what the core is looking for. She's neither outstandingly smart nor wicked in any way. At this point, not even her own person. There's no reason to allow someone so unimpressive to join the ranks of Amphibia's greatest minds. Some more time passes before Marcy and the Plantars arrive in Newtopia. When they finally do, Andreas has already uncovered the information from the book about the Calamity Box. Anne might attempt to clear the first temple, but would obviously fail. Thus, nothing mentionable occurs until Anne and Marcy reunite. As soon as their initial excitement passes, Marcy and the Plantars put Anne in the picture regarding everything that occurred back in the valley. The situation is now similar to the OT, just with the roles slightly switched up. Unsurprisingly, Anne is shocked. Yet, even while acknowledging Sasha did something terrible, she is able to keep believing in Sasha, telling Marcy they'll surely be able to turn things around again. At this point, we should mention that Sasha's betrayal on this timeline is slightly less bad than on the OT. I mean, she did not try to kill Harpap, or Sprig, or Marcy, or Ren. The rest is totes forgivable, right? Based on her own fears, Marcy asks Anne whether she believes Sasha does not want to be friends with her anymore. Evidently, Anne does not know Sasha's motives behind her actions, and can only guess why she behaved this way. Nonetheless, based on her own unpleasant experiences with Sasha, she is pretty sure that this is one of the cases where Sasha is just the way she is, and that neither Marcy herself nor Sasha's discontent with their friendship were the cause for the recent events. Although this exchange was a great chance for Marcy to open up to Anne regarding her own mistake, she does not yet do so, as she does not want to risk losing Anne too, especially not now, because she cannot deal with her Sasha issues on her own. Next, they report the tidings to the king, who is secretly delighted to learn Sasha is with Grime, in other words, within his reach. Instead of letting them be hunted by Yunnan like in the OT, he sends for them to come to Newtopia. Why? Firstly, on this timeline, Grime has only attempted treason, but did not factually commit any crime that could make Andreas come for his head. Secondly, he now has a plan that involves Sasha, and inviting them peacefully is definitely the less complicated way of getting through to her. He explains it is best they all gather and then proceed to recharge the gems. Sasha and Grime depart from Toad Tower. Destination: the capital. They travel swiftly, arriving not long after the king's invitation reached them. Now that they are all reunited again, Anne and Marcy wish to get rid of any bad blood between them, approaching Sasha regarding the events of the valley. Unlike on the OT, when they first met again at the third temple, Sasha and Grime do not seek to usurp Amphibia's rule, what in turn means Sasha has no incentive to play nice for Ren and Marcy now. Not admitting to having done anything wrong, she keeps dodging their quite direct questions why she chose to betray Marcy, by manipulatively accusing Anne of not knowing what she's talking about, because she was not there and only knows Marcy's side of the story. Due to their lack of development thus far, neither of them can stand their ground against Sasha's dominant nature. Without solving the matter, they return to their former dynamics. Shortly after, the Plantars cross Sasha's path. They thank her for saving HP's life. Even so, they outright inform her there is no relation one could call friendship between them, because they are not compatible and absolutely do not approve of the way she's treating Anne and Marcy. Sasha does not care and does not want their gratitude, but the Plantars are glad they could agree the score between them is settled. With the core's help, Andreas could listen in on all the conversations, thereby gaining confirmation the girls' dynamics are exactly the way he imagined them to be. Using Grimes and Sasha's positions as a pretext, he steadily gets close to Sasha. Soon she begins to trust him, especially since he keeps bestowing them with increasingly fancy privileges. During that time, the temple missions take their course. Potentially, Marcy may not manage to clear the first temple, because under light of the fact that the whole After the Rain affair did not occur, Anne and HP do not have a heartfelt argument during the Flipboard game that originally inspired Marcy to break off the game. In that case, the girls would not succeed in charging the box. In short, they would soon be of no use to Andreas anymore, what equals him getting rid of them. Alternatively, she does break off the game of her own accord, but that takes a lot more time than on the OT. As soon as she realizes that the others will get hurt over the course of this game, she begins questioning the challenge. On grounds of her experiences with Sasha Sasha that remind her friends should keep each other from harm rather than incurring it. She suggests stopping for now, at least until they come up with a valid strategy that would work without anyone getting clobbered. However, Sasha forces her to go on, as she can't stand Marcy's cowardly whining and, more importantly, will not accept defeat. Thus, Marcy continues playing for many rounds to come, enduring having to watch everyone else suffer due to her decisions. Conceivably, after a while HP gets seriously hurt, breaking a bone or something, given his old body is much more fragile than those of the young Sprouts. Evidently, this has been going too far. Marcy surrenders the game, in spite of Sasha urging her to continue. As they leave the temple, Sasha heavily blames Marcy, listing all the consequences her failure will have. For every tear Marcy then sheds because of her words, Sasha gets more embarrassed when they end up being allowed to charge the gem because Marcy prioritized her friend's well-being. Everyone present knows that she's clearly been in the wrong, though Sasha attempts to cover it up by spouting nonsense like the temple would not have accepted her early cowardly surrender, and that because of her, Marcy reached the point of heroic surrender necessary to pass the test, according to her. Similar to the first temple mission, Anne has trouble passing Valeriana's various tests, as Sasha foils her every attempt to help people in order to keep her focused on what she believes is the real trial. For that reason, we consider her non-success an ending to this route, with the same consequences mentioned earlier. By way of alternative, Valeriana notices she can't test Anne's true personality with Sasha repeatedly interfering. Without further ado, she creates a situation in which Sasha is the one needing help. At first, she refuses to accept Anne's offer to help, thanks to her monstrous amount of pride. Eventually, she is forced to ask for aid, and Anne saves her, though Sasha cannot thank her properly. Valeriana proceeds according to plan, separating Anne from the rest of the group, on account of what just happened reinforcing Anne's belief that helping is the right thing to do. She can now pass the test. Moreover, she's got the time to completely recharge the blue gemstone, because the atmosphere back where the others are is heavy, and they aren't screaming watching cat videos. Finally, the last temple is cleared. Sasha aced all challenges and can't shut up about how well she did, how they could have never charged the box without her help. In contrast to some of the other swap what-ifs, they do not open the box and return straight home at this point. Sasha has long been deceived by Andrea's promises to give her more of the fame and power he granted her a mere taste of so far. End of discussion. The ring will go to Gondor. I mean, the box goes to Newtopia. Interestingly, Sasha's gem has not been charged entirely, because Sasha could not await her bright future anymore, and hastily leaves the temple after defeating the golem. Well, Sasha hands the box over to Andreas. Surprise, surprise, he betrays them. There are two ways this situation could turn out, the short route and the long one. Andreas snitches on Sasha. No one's power is activated, because no one has ties to anyone significant enough to trigger their awakening. Everyone is imprisoned or killed. Even Marcy, because Andreas did not get to know her close enough to decide she should be core. In the end, as a reward for his plans working out, Andreas is allowed to join the core, and together they invade Earth. Alternatively, they agree they must fight Andreas together. Not having learned a single lesson thus far, Sasha still presumes she is assuming command, ordering her allies to shield her from Frobo attacks while she deals with Andreas. Rightfully so, everyone's fed up with her, denying obeying her lately misjudged instructions. Although they are in grave danger, an argument ensues, as well as pure chaos, given how Anne and Marcy are finally throwing everything at Sasha that has ever bothered them about her. In the meantime, Andreas is laughing at them and holding a speech about how pathetic and superfluous friendship is, while simultaneously humiliating Sasha, wheezing that her foolishness and overall horrible personality ruined everyone's lives. A few seconds later, he regrets doing so. Sasha's pride, her conviction of being the greatest and strongest, has been hurt to such a degree that her desire to prove the opposite triggers her calamity power. That day, Andreas learns what it feels like to be punched in the nuts, where on the OT, Marcy used this chance to fix the Calamity Box and send Anne as well as the Plantars to Earth, nothing of this sort occurs on our route. First and foremost, who would she even send home now? Originally, Anne was the obvious choice for many different reasons, none of which are really relevant in the story we are currently discussing. Secondly, Marcy's secret has not been revealed yet, not to mention that she is still far from reaching the tipping point in her development from whence she feels obliged to actually make up for her mistakes. Put differently, there's no incentive to go home to where her parents and their issues await her. Thirdly, unlike on the OT, Sasha has not attempted to separate Anne and the Plantars using the box, so that no one even knows the box is dysfunctional. Any attempt to teleport in this situation would fail, another chance not occur. Consequently, while Andreas is down, all the main characters quickly flee to Voidwood along with the box. After the situation has cooled down and the first shock has passed, the Calamity Trio needs to discuss some things. Sasha inquires whether Anne and Marcy meant what they said back at the castle. They confirm, deep in her heart, Sasha is fighting with herself until she melts down. Apart from the recent obvious stuff, she was honestly not aware of how horrible her egoism made everyone feel. By the way, this would be a perfect opportunity to expand Sasha's character and to bring some fan theories to fruition. For example, Sasha could talk about her divorced parents, her past, and how it all led to her being this way. Anne and Marcy are shocked, as they did not know any of this, and decide to give her another chance, for they feel compassion and understand why Sasha believed she needed to act the way she did. Anne underlines that she could have, perhaps should have, talked to them about everything. They would have supported her, and together talked out any issue. Hearing these words from Anne motivates Marcy to communicate her feelings too. In all detail, she explains what she did, why she did it, and all the emotions that led her to this action, beginning with the way Anne and Sasha used to treat her. Of course, her actions are still super wrong and aren't easy to forgive, especially since she kept quiet about it for so long. Yet, because she basically went through a similar process, Sasha understands that it took an enormous amount of courage to admit her mistake, and how she was not able to confess earlier. It's her who reminds Anne, who is understandably pissed off, that what Anne told her earlier either applies to no one or all three of them, Marcy included. Accordingly, they discuss all of their issues for a while, forgive each other, and promise to stay in touch even after Marcy moves. From this moment on, it is immediately noticeable how rapidly Sasha is developing. She seeks conversation with the people she spent time with in Amphibia. First off, Grime. She confesses that it was all her idea to free the Plantars, and that Marcy merely supported her. Of course he is hurt, but he goes out of his way to truly listen to and understand her, ultimately accepting that what he wanted to do was wrong anyways. He also apologizes to Marcy later on. Next, she finds the Plantars and honestly apologizes for her past behavior, hoping they will give her one last chance to get to know them properly this time. They are hesitant, but impressed by Sasha's new self, and offer to take things slowly. Now that all the relationship issues are accounted for, they consider what their next steps regarding Andreas should be. Grime suggests asking the Toad Army for help, given that their force needs to match that of the king. Long story short, they visit the Toad Council to ask for support. They deny, simply because they don't believe anything the others say, and even if it was true, they aren't outstandingly keen on picking a fight with the crown. Sasha can't even activate her powers on demand yet, what might have helped in convincing them. After pondering about the matter for a while, the council realizes that if what they say should be true by any means, the best option for the Toads is to capture the main characters while they are here and deliver them to Andreas. Through the Toads' attack, Sasha manages to show off her powers and hold her ground against the Toads, who now do believe the story. Yet they still don't want to support the main characters, who now agree they cannot trust the council anymore anyways. Before they depart, the Toad Elder offers one single piece of advice to them: to look for Valeriana. Turns out he is old enough to know a little bit about Valeriana's order that might have been greater in the past. Fast forward, they they visit Valeriana, who directs them to the Mother of Foams, who in turn unveils all the mysteries surrounding the box, the prophecy and the powers, so that the girls can get all Calamity powers back. Once more, this story could end on a short notice or become similar to the OT ending. Either the Calamity Trio easily knocks down Andreas in the core, allowing them to keep the Calamity box afterwards and travel between the worlds whenever they want, or the core activates the moon before they are destroyed. If that is the case, who of the girls would cast the secret spell? I think it should be clear to see that Sasha is the obvious choice here. Since she has sworn herself to change, not much time has passed, meaning she has not had an abundance of chances to prove she can do better. Casting the spell is her way of making up for all the years she tormented Anne and Marcy. Plus, she wants to prove it to herself that she can be selfless too. This is a great way of saying goodbye to her selfish ways, with a beautiful side effect that she can protect all amphibians. Indeed, her heroism is a testament to how far Sasha has come. The biggest question still remains though, is she eligible for the position of Guardian? On one hand, maybe the Guardian are surprised by how great a person Sasha is now that her personal issues have been resolved. Especially her final deed confirms that she will no longer make the same mistakes she used to. On the other hand, over the course of this timeline, her behavior was, frankly, terrible. Quite similar to the OT actually. First a negative development, and very late a big turn, that she only accomplished by being harshly confronted with the fact that she is a jerk. In the OT, her change presumably did not suffice, thus theoretically it doesn't now. However, we don't know for sure whether the person who cast the secret spell meets the Guardian, regardless of whether that person is to become new Guardian or not. Therefore, if Sasha does meet them without being offered the spot, I believe she would negotiate with them, convincing the Guardian to at least send Anne and Marcy home. If Sasha is not revived, the other two can still return to Earth. And that's the end of this timeline. There will be many more alternate Amphibia timelines coming your way, if you like this video and subscribe to Frogtoons. I'll see you around.